They thought they were capturing just another primitive species, but what they got was a battle-hardened ex-soldier who doesn't know how to quit. Welcome to a universe where humanity isn't just surviving, it's rewriting the rules of the galaxy. Aliens abducted the wrong man, and now they're about to learn what it means to fight a human who's already lost everything, except his will to win. This is They Abducted the Wrong Human, a sci-fi epic packed with action, wit, and the raw force of human resilience. Grab a drink, turn up your volume, and strap in. The story begins now. The forest on the outskirts of Earth's Appalachian Divide looked like any other to the cloaked ship that hovered silently above it. To its crew of smug-faced, multi-eyed interstellar traders, the ancient pines and cricket song were just scenery, backdrop to a routine abduction. Their scanners had flagged a solitary human, age estimation, elderly. No cybernetic implants, no biological enhancements, no signs of communication equipment. Just one old Terran male, living alone in a cabin of rusted tin and moss-covered stone. A primitive, isolated specimen. Perfect. Inside the bridge of the Carvex vessel Silken Fang, Captain Thurkath issued orders with a hiss-click of mandibles. Deploy retrieval team. Stealth protocol active. No damage to merchandise. Tranquilize on contact. A trio of armored beings slipped from the ship's belly like ink into water. They hit the forest floor without a sound, their forms shimmering with phase displacement cloaks. Through night vision optics, the cabin came into view. Smoke curled from its chimney. A dog-eared paperback rested on the porch railing. A rocking chair creaked gently, though no wind moved the trees. Odd. Inside the cabin, John Mercer paused mid-sip of coffee, the chipped mug halfway to his lips. His eyes, a weary gray that had watched too many wars unfold on too many planets, flicked toward the shadows moving just beyond the window pane. He didn't breathe, didn't twitch, just listened. The floorboard beneath the front porch groaned, half a millimeter more than usual. They were here. He set the mug down without a sound, slid open a wooden panel in the cabin wall, and pulled out a battered, oil-dark duffel bag. Not that he needed anything from it. This wasn't his first rodeo. The bag was insurance. Habit, muscle memory from decades of needing an exit plan. The first intruder shimmered into view, right behind him. Big mistake. John spun, grabbed the creature's weapon arm, twisted it at an angle that would make a yoga master cry, and rammed its own tranquilizer dart into its neck. The alien blinked. Once, then crumpled. Outside, the other two heard the commotion and charged in. Mercer dropped low, sweeping a thick boot into the second attacker's knee joint with surgical precision. The armor cracked, not because he was strong, but because he knew where it would fail. 50 years in Black Ops didn't teach him to fight stronger, it taught him to fight smarter. The second alien hit the wall. Mercer didn't give it a chance to recover. He rammed the butt of the tranquilizer rifle into its skull, hard. Lights out. The third stopped in the doorway, stunned. John stared back at it, eyes calm, unblinking. You picked the wrong retirement home, boys. The third turned to flee. Mercer was faster. He snatched the creature's wrist mid-spin, flipped it onto the porch railing, and held its head just over the edge. "Who sent you?" he growled. The alien whimpered in a language of wet clicks. Mercer didn't speak it, but he didn't need to. He saw the fear in its pupils, saw what it saw. And that was enough. "Tell your captain," he whispered. "You came for a sheep. You found a wolf." Then he let the thing go. It staggered back into the woods, vanished. John didn't chase it. He knew where it would go, back to its ship, back to the captain, back to tell them what they'd stirred up. He looked down at the unconscious bodies at his feet, then at the sky above. Somewhere up there, something thought it had won, that it had caught an old man too far from help. They didn't know. No one did. That John Mercer was a relic, but not the kind that sat behind glass. He was the kind buried under rubble, with a live grenade in one hand and unfinished business in the other. By the time the crew of the Silken Fang realized their team had failed, it was too late. He was already on board. The airlock cycled with a chime no one heard, except Thurkath heard the sudden alarm spike on the console. Infiltration? No, impossible. The ship was secure, sealed, impenetrable. The lights flickered, a low klaxon began to moan, and then John Mercer stepped into the corridor, wearing one of their own rebreathers like a mask, tranquilizer rifle slung across his shoulder, alien tech wired to his wrist like some madman's bracer. Thurkath stared at the monitors. One by one, his crew blinked out of view. The life signs dimmed. Not dead, just downed. Neutralized, efficiently. Like someone who'd done this before. He hissed into the comms, "What are you?" The human's voice came through the speaker like a whisper sharpened to a knife's edge. Old habit. John moved through the ship like a phantom, disabling systems as he went. Not destroying, not yet. He wanted them to see it, to understand. This wasn't a rescue. This wasn't a lucky escape. This was war. The small kind, the personal kind, the kind that made legends out of ghosts. When he finally reached the bridge, the last two crew members raised their weapons. John didn't even flinch. He flicked a switch on the hacked bracer. Every light in the ship went red. Thurkath screamed. The ship shuddered, engines sputtering into emergency override. Alarms howled. Gravity failed for a second, just enough to throw everyone off balance. John landed with cat-like grace, slammed one alien against the navigation panel, then pointed the rifle at Thurkath. "Land this thing," he said, "or I will." "You'll kill us all," the captain spat. John tilted his head. "Only if you make me pilot. Your call." The ship landed in a clearing 4 miles west of the original abduction site. The authorities never found it, because by the time satellites picked up residual traces, John had already walked away. No souvenirs, no dead aliens, just silence. Back in his cabin, he poured another cup of coffee. The same chipped mug, same creaking rocker. Only this time he looked up at the night sky, not with wonder, but warning. "You want Earth?" he muttered. "Come and try." Far above, the galactic underworld's whispers began to change. No longer did they speak of Earth as a primitive rock full of soft-skinned prey. They spoke of a ghost, a myth, a relic. The council chambers of the Uxari Imperium were carved into the hollowed heart of a dead star, suspended inside a black dwarf's gravitational cradle. Here, time moved differently. Seconds on the inside stretched into hours outside. A design choice, intentional. Power, after all, deserved patience. Seated in a sprawl of tentacles and photon silk robes, Arch-Sensor Velith tapped a claw against the holographic record floating above the dais. The projection replayed footage from the Silken Fang's internal logs, thermal vision, audio spikes, a figure moving like a shadow that bled intention. One by one, her agents fell, and then came the face. Creased, scarred human. Just one. Velith's voice was low and careful. A single Terran. No armor, no exosuit, no neural dampeners. And yet, the chamber's silence stretched. A draconic admiral hissed from the left pillar. "We've captured hundreds of their kind. Weak, confused, dull. What makes this one different?" Velith zoomed in. "Experience. Precision. He used our tranquilizers against us. Sabotaged a Class 6 raider without triggering a single containment alarm and left the vessel intact. He wanted us to see." A merchant lord's voice oozed greed. "Then capture him. Clone him. Sell him to the highest bidder." A voice behind her, cold as vacuum. "You misunderstand. He's not for sale. He's a message." That voice belonged to Director Yoral, the Imperium's most discreet fixer. Wherever a war ended before it began, Yoral had been there, in the shadows. His eyes flicked toward Velith. "We thought Earth was ripe for harvesting," he said. "But if there's one of these, there could be more. We need to reassess." "No," Velith leaned forward. "We need to eliminate. Quietly. Before this becomes legend." "Do you even know his name?" someone asked. Velith bared her fangs. "We do now." She turned to a pulsing datasphere, muttered an ancient override phrase, and a name flickered into the air. Jonathan Mercer, Earth. Military ID redacted, status deceased. The room stirred. "Deceased?" Yoral raised a brow. "Officially?" 50 years ago, Velith said. "Died in a shuttle accident, but his body was never found. Records sealed, highly classified, Black Ops level deep." Yoral's smile was razor thin. "Even better, a ghost." Mercer cleaned his knife in the stream behind his cabin, watching blood swirl like ink in water. Not alien blood, rabbit this time. Life had returned to normal, or rather the illusion of normal. But something was off. Too quiet, too still. He stood, eyes scanning treetops and cloud lines. No ship, no hum of distant thrusters, just birdsong and breeze. He didn't relax, never did. Survival meant staying one step ahead, always. Back inside, he tapped a switch hidden beneath a loose stone in the fireplace. The cabin's floor shifted. A panel slid aside, revealing stairs spiraling downward. He descended. This was no cabin. Not really. It was a shell, an outer skin wrapped around something older, deeper. At the base of the stairs, Mercer stepped into a cold room humming with power. A curved wall of screens blinked to life, displaying orbital telemetry, satellite intercepts, weather distortions, off-world signal patterns, his own private observatory. A blinking alert caught his eye. Gravitic fluctuation, 32 clicks west, someone was testing a cloak. Sloppy. He traced the signal, hacked the frequency, and caught a fragment of encoded chatter. Then he froze. Imperium high tongue. This wasn't random, it was a net, a perimeter. They weren't just watching, they were hunting. Meanwhile, aboard the sleek strike cruiser Whisper Fang, Director Yoral briefed his team. 8 hand-picked assassins from 8 different species, silent, invisible, deadly. They had no names, only ranks. This man is not a soldier, Yoral began. He is a habitat. War lives inside him. Do not treat him as prey. Treat him as a disease. Contain, asked one. Destroy, said Yoral. The drop pods deployed at midnight, falling like sparks from a dying star. No sound, no light, just impact, soft as snow. But Mercer had already moved. The trap he laid was surgical. He knew they'd scan for body heat, so he gave them heat. 12 heat signatures scattered across the forest. Old water heaters, warm rocks, a cow's heart in a styrofoam cooler. Classic misdirection. One assassin fell into a pit lined with sharpened metal scrap, cloaked too late to dodge. Another triggered a high-frequency pulse that scrambled their retinal implants. 2 were caught in a feedback loop of their own stealth tech, blinking in and out like glitching ghosts until Mercer finished them with a suppressed slug round through the trees. By dawn, 5 were down, silently. No alarm, just shadows dying in the woods. The 6th found his cabin and grinned. Jackpot. He stepped inside, blade drawn. The floor exploded, not into flame, into light, projected illusions that confused his targeting system. Walls warped, angles twisted. The assassins spun, disoriented, and that was all Mercer needed. He dropped from the ceiling like a spider and drove a carbonized ice pick through the base of the skull. 2 left, but they'd regrouped. Smart, these were pros. They used sound decoys, disruption bursts, thermobaric lures. But John wasn't reacting, he was waiting. They searched all night. At sunrise, they heard breathing, soft, close. One of them turned and realized too late. It wasn't Mercer breathing. It was the bear he'd lured to that exact spot using scent markers. A blur of fur, a scream, bones. The last assassin ran. Tracked, tagged, and trembling, she climbed a ridge to send an emergency recall signal. But the beacon didn't activate. Her finger pressed the button again. Nothing. Behind her, a voice. I blocked that frequency 10 minutes ago. She spun, weapon raised, then hesitated. Mercer stood, hands empty, eyes calm. She was good. She'd survived. Almost made it. He nodded once. Tell them, and tell them true. She bolted. He didn't follow. Far across the galaxy, Director Yoral stood before Veleth once more, his cloak scorched. 8 in, 1 out, he let her live, Veleth hissed. Why? To deliver a message. She stared at him. What message? Yoral looked away. Send more. The Uxari Imperium had a saying, carved into the bone walls of their academies. Control the story, and you control the future. That was why, long before they deployed fleets or soldiers, they deployed editors, information engineers, narrative assassins. And now, deep within the Imperium's central data vault on Sereth Prime, the story of Jonathan Mercer was being rewritten. Not erased, corrupted. He was to become a myth, a rumor, a glitch in an unreliable recording. His military service? Fabricated. His deeds? Attributed to multiple conflicting agents. His death? Verified, twice, by different agencies. By the time the Imperium's historians were done, no one would agree on whether Jonathan Mercer had ever truly existed. They called it Ghost Protocol. 3,000 meters beneath the city of Virel X, a librarian named Elor sat at his console, splicing truth into fiction. He was slow, deliberate, efficient. Click, delete, confirm, repeat. Until a red warning flashed. Unauthorized mirror detected. Elor blinked. Mirror, he muttered. There's no sync scheduled. Another alert. Process. Mercer. Access node. Local. His blood turned to ice. He reached for the override key, and the lights cut out. The room was suddenly silent. Not empty, just silent in the wrong way. Something moved behind him. Are you Elor? A voice asked, deep and calm. Elor swallowed hard. Why, yes. Good. That means you're a record keeper. You care about truth. The man stepped into view. Worn jacket, scarred face, gray hair, unmistakable. You're him. Jonathan Mercer nodded, still breathing, much to their disappointment. Elor backed away. You can't be here. This is Sereth Prime. The archives are guarded. They were, Mercer said, past tense. He dropped a small device on the desk, a cube of shifting light. What is this? History, Mercer said. The real one, my backup. Dates, logs, files, videos, all of it. He stepped closer. What? I want you to leak it, distribute it, off-world, fragmented, impossible to trace. Elor hesitated. If I do this, the Imperium will kill me. Mercer nodded. If you don't, they'll kill the truth. For a moment, silence. Then Elor inserted the cube into a secure port. Uploading now. Above them, alarms screamed. Steel shutters locked across the city. Armored patrols scrambled like hornets. The data vault was compromised, and the Imperium did not tolerate leaks. Especially not of this magnitude. Within minutes, a kill team was inbound. Inside the vault, Mercer watched Elor's screen fill with transfer bars and decryption spikes. Dozens of nodes lit up across the galaxy. Encrypted pings fired in every direction. It was working. Until the firewall snapped shut. Wait, something's jamming the ports, Elor said. They've sealed outbound traffic. Mercer frowned. Can you burn it? You mean wipe the archive? No, I mean ignite it. Elor stared. That's madness. This is a backup node for 5-star systems. You'd erase centuries of knowledge. Mercer's voice was steady. They already are. You just don't realize it yet. He stepped forward, inserted a second cube. This one blinked red. A failsafe. Inside it, raw code, virus chains, subatomic entropy spikes. A software firestorm designed not to destroy files but to uncouple reality from memory. Dates would shift, names would dissolve, archives would choke on their own metadata. Elor's hands shook. Final confirmation? Mercer nodded. The librarian whispered a prayer and pressed the button. The system began to melt. 3 levels above, the kill team arrived. 6 agents, bio-augmented, armor-wrapped. Their orders were simple, no prisoners, no hesitation. But when they breached the chamber, it was empty. Just screens, smoke, silence. Then the room locked behind them, a soft click, and then fire. The explosion bloomed inward, implosive, not outward. A vacuum detonation, folding light into sound, sound into silence. By the time the upper halls responded, the vault no longer existed. And neither, it seemed, did Mercer. But they were wrong. He was already on the move. Elor had given him what he needed. A path through the undernet, a list of sympathetic nodes, and, most importantly, the name of the person who had authorized Ghost Protocol. Admiral Vroshket. The name wasn't unfamiliar. Vroshket had commanded the Uxari front during the Ember Cradle siege. That siege had ended when one single Terran sniper stayed behind to cover the evacuation of 8,000 civilians, holding the ridge for 39 hours without food or water. That sniper had been Mercer, and now Vroshket had made the fatal mistake of trying to bury him. Meanwhile, on the command platform orbiting over the planet Darsoon, Vroshket watched the latest reports from Sereth Prime. The data loss was catastrophic. 6 sectors had gone dark, reboots failed, entire colonies had lost their legal identities, no birth records, no ownership registries. Chaos rippled outward. Find him, Vroshket growled. Now. But his aides hesitated. He's already everywhere, one whispered. What do you mean? The aide turned the screen. Dozens of feeds, citizen holologs, leaked footage, guerrilla broadcasts. Mercer's story was out. Clips of his voice, his mission, his past. Even interviews with survivors he'd saved decades ago, some human, some alien. The Imperium had tried to erase him, and in doing so, made him a legend. In a bar on the mining moon Kestrel 9, a scarred Trilaxi trader watched a grainy video on her holopad. Mercer walking through smoke. They said we were weak, that Earth was a mistake, that humanity was a fluke. I say flukes don't survive extinction. Accidents don't build weapons out of asteroids. Mistakes don't fight back. The bar went quiet. A grizzled miner looked up. He's real? The trader nodded. More than real. He's angry. Back aboard his cloaked skiff, Mercer reviewed the network logs. Thousands of pings, retweets, darknet shares, pirate mirrors. The truth had taken root, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. He tapped a console and brought up his next target. Imperium Command Core. The heart of the beast. There was one file left to corrupt. One truth they still owned. Why the Imperium feared Earth in the first place. The core of the Imperium wasn't a building, it was a moon. Artificial, ancient, dead to all but the most elite of its functionaries. They called it Vadron Vel, or the Thought Vault. Mercer had called it worse. He drifted silently through the asteroid ring, wrapped in magnetic camouflage, riding an outdated freighter so broken it was invisible to security scans. That was the trick. The Imperium never saw threats coming from below. Inside Vadran Vel, Admiral Vroshket stood in the Hall of Silence. The air was heavy with memory. Sculpted walls displayed the victories of the Uxari, burned planets, broken empires, shattered peace accords, but none of them, Vrosh knew, had brought the Imperium closer to safety, not like Earth had. He stopped before a vault marked with an old glyph. File, H Delta 13. He hesitated before entering his code. Even he was only authorized partial access. The rest? Sealed by the Founders, under penalty of disintegration. He opened the door. Inside, the holographic record still shimmered. Origin, Sol System, Planet, Earth, Subject, Death World classification. Vroshket grimaced. This file had never been meant for wide dissemination. If the galaxy knew what Earth really was, it wouldn't fear them. It would run. Meanwhile, Mercer had landed. He moved through the underlayer of Vadranvel like a virus, one layer at a time, disabling drones, spoofing sensors, ducking into air shafts only used for cooling forbidden archives. He wasn't alone. With him was a small black sphere, a field drone named Winston, with the personality of a grumpy British butler and the ethics of a lockpick. "Are you sure this is wise, sir?" Winston buzzed. "Last time we broke into a high-level government node, you got electrocuted and I was reformatted as a coffee machine." "We got the data, didn't we?" Mercer whispered. "Yes, and a permanent ban from 6 spaceports and 3 marriages." They reached the access shaft. 40 meters of sheer vertical silence. Mercer climbed without a word. Winston muttered to himself, "Yes, brilliant plan. Break into the Imperium's most secure data vault with a scarred war veteran and a toaster. Nothing can go wrong." In the Hall of Silence, Vroshket replayed a fragment of the original footage. A Terran storm, lightning, floods, a human child barefoot, giggling, chasing a stick in gale force winds. Caption, age 3. Terrain, category 5. Next frame, a war zone. Terran infantry crawling through mud, explosions, chemical clouds. One soldier pulls another to safety, then keeps charging. Caption, survival instinct high, pain tolerance inhuman. And then the voiceover. Earth does not produce species. It produces weapons with emotions. Every one of them is born on a battlefield. And every one of them learns before they speak that pain means you're still alive. That was the truth. Earth wasn't just a death world, it was a forge. Mercer reached the top of the shaft. Winston deployed a series of tendrils and hacked the final lock. The door opened into darkness. "Smells like government secrets and guilt," Mercer whispered. They entered. Rows of data stells towered into the dark. Red lights pulsed like heartbeat monitors. Winston floated to a console. Location found, file H Delta 13. Locked behind triple quantum encryption and, emotion-based access control. Mercer raised an eyebrow. They encrypt files with feelings now? Apparently, it only opens for those who feel appropriate fear. Mercer stepped forward. Nothing happened. Winston clicked. "Interesting. You're not afraid. That may be problematic." "Try hope," Mercer said, placing his palm on the interface. The lights flickered. The vault opened. What poured out wasn't just data, it was history. Winston's sensors spun. "Sir, these files, they're not just about Earth. They're about every failed attempt to contain it." Mercer scanned the logs. 2514 AD, Terran diplomats accidentally dismantle a mind control virus by insulting it. 2551 AD, human engineers override alien AIs by feeding them paradox memes. 2567 AD, a single Terran teenager causes economic collapse of 3 outer ring economies by inventing a space cryptocurrency as a joke. Winston hummed, "You are objectively the galaxy's worst idea." Mercer smiled, "And the only one that still fights back." He downloaded the files. Behind them, an alarm began to chirp. "Sir," Winston said, "time to run." They exited into a hail of gunfire. Dozens of guards, energy shields, drones. Mercer ducked behind a pillar. "Winston, smoke!" The drone popped a capsule. The air filled with a dense, glittering fog that bent light and confused sensors. Then Mercer ran. Through corridors, over balconies, down shafts. Winston floated beside him, streaming code. "You're going to love this," Winston said. "I just uploaded the real H Delta 13 file to every major news node in the quadrant, including 3 wedding registries, 1 cooking blog, and, somehow, a pirate radio station on a nudist moon." "Perfect," Mercer grinned. "Let the galaxy choke on the truth." They burst into the hangar bay. The stolen freighter was waiting. 3 seconds of sprint, 1 second to fire up engines, and then sky. Back on the surface of Darsoon, Admiral Vroshket watched the feeds collapse. Not from hacking, from belief. People were watching the footage, reading the files, seeing humans for what they really were. Not monsters, not demons, just a species forged in pressure. Maddening, Imperfect, refusing to die. Sir, his aide whispered. What now? Vroshket said nothing, because deep down, even he believed it now. The more the Imperium tried to erase Mercer, the more real he became. On board the freighter, Mercer sat in silence. Stars blurred past the cockpit. Winston played Terran jazz through a scratched speaker. Mercer reviewed the final page of the file. Why the Imperium declared Earth Class X forbidden. Because for all their warships, their fleets, their tech, humans don't give up. They laugh at death, they weaponize failure, they turn trauma into fuel, and when cornered, they become legends. He looked out the window and whispered, "Let's remind them." The file spread like a plague. Within 48 hours, over 700 planetary networks had downloaded and mirrored file H Delta 13. News anchors wept on air. School children reenacted clips in class. Anti-Imperium graffiti exploded in public squares. But what truly terrified the High Council wasn't the data. It was the reaction. Whole species, some allies, some slaves, were now asking one question. If the Imperium lied about Earth, what else have they hidden? Mercer watched it all unfold from a hollowed-out freighter orbiting a dead moon. He looked tired, but his eyes burned like a man who'd finally pushed the first domino. Winston floated beside him, projecting feed after feed. Your little broadcast has reached even the Vorathi, the drone said. They haven't cared about anything since they turned their own sun into a disco ball. Let's hope they care enough to stand up, Mercer replied. He stared at the screen showing the Imperium's official response. Earth remains classified as a galactic hazard. The rogue agent Mercer is wanted for treason, data sabotage, and possession of unauthorized charisma. Winston snorted. Unauthorized charisma? They're afraid you're too likable. They should be. Inside the halls of the High Council, the reaction was volcanic. Admiral Vroshket stood trial, not for failure, but for letting the truth slip. He didn't resist. He knew it wouldn't matter. The virus wasn't in the file. It was in the idea, an idea Mercer had weaponized with surgical precision, that the Imperium is built on fear, and fear dies in the presence of truth. The Imperium needed a counterstrike, and so deep within Project Aegis, they built one. They didn't create a ship. They didn't launch a war. They engineered a myth. Her name was Nova Eris, a clone, a hybrid of Uxari precision and Terran genetics. Tall, impossibly poised, voice tuned to frequencies known to induce trust. She looked human because she had to be. She had to compete with Mercer's legend. They gave her a backstory. Born on Earth, rebelled against chaos, now fights for order and peace. They gave her footage, faked missions, rescued civilians, dramatic speeches under burning skies, and they gave her one objective: discredit Mercer. The first video appeared 2 days later. Nova stood on a ruined colony, holding a child. Behind her, the ruins of a city Mercer had supposedly inspired to revolt. He gave them hope, and they died for it. Ask yourselves, is Mercer fighting for freedom, or feeding a war he cannot win? The video went viral. Not because of its content, because it looked real. Even Mercer blinked. They're using my tactics, turning truth into theater. Winston nodded grimly. She's dangerous, sir. She's you, but with corporate funding and better cheekbones. The galaxy began to split. Some believed Mercer, the rogue truth speaker. Others believed Nova, the savior with a plan. But most, they believed both. And in that confusion, the Imperium saw opportunity. On Station Ether 6, riots broke out. Mercer supporters wrapped in Terran flags demanded justice. Nova loyalists rallied under the banner of United Order. Then someone, no one knows who, triggered the gas line. Hundreds died, and the Imperium blamed them both. Mercer was in hiding when the message came. Encrypted, anonymous, short. Meet me at Cradle's Edge. I can prove Nova isn't real. He stared at it for a long time. Winston floated close. It's a trap. I know. Are we going? Mercer stood. I don't dodge ghosts. I hunt them. Cradle's Edge was a dead shipyard orbiting a neutron star, abandoned, cursed, full of whispers and corpses that never rotted. Perfect place for secrets. He arrived in silence. No weapons. No drone. Just a beacon transmitting on an old Terran resistance frequency. Then she stepped out. Not Nova. Someone older. Human. Eyes tired. Voice shaky. My name is Kess. I was part of Aegis. I built her. Mercer froze. Built? She's not human, not even close. She's a neural puppet, scripted, rewritten, broadcast across hundreds of stations using predictive behavior models. She bleeds. Kess shook her head. No, you saw what they wanted you to see. Kess handed him a drive, Nova's source code, mission logs, her kill switch. Mercer took it with trembling hands. "This proves everything," he said. Kess didn't respond because a beam of light burned straight through her skull. Sniper. Mercer dove. The whole station lit up. Drones, flashbangs, voices shouting, asset engaged. It was a trap after all, but the Imperium had miscalculated. Mercer didn't just escape, he streamed the whole thing live. The footage broke the stalemate. The moment Nova's programming code was projected when the galaxy saw she was a puppet, people stopped choosing sides. They chose freedom. The Imperium cracked down hard, but every arrest birthed 100 new rebels. Every cover-up fed Mercer's legend. Nova? She disappeared. Rumors claimed she went rogue. Others said she shut herself down. But Mercer knew better. "She's watching," he told Winston. "She's learning." Winston hovered in silence. "And when she comes back?" Mercer grinned. "I'll be ready." It began with a whisper in a prison cell, a name spoken between cracked lips beneath the sound of chains. Mercer. That one word, scrawled on walls, muttered through bruised teeth, kept prisoners from breaking. The guards heard it often enough to grow afraid. Not of the man, but of the idea. Mercer sat alone in a cave carved into a drifting asteroid, his makeshift war room lit only by solar cracks and flickering holoscreens. Maps, charts, broadcasts, warnings. Victory had never tasted so bitter. He had spent the last 3 months dodging plasma bolts and truth assassins, building an alliance from shards, exiles, smugglers, disillusioned soldiers. No armies, no fleets, just belief. And belief had limits. He watched footage of a rebel cell storming an Imperium base on Malakos IV. They weren't subtle. They weren't clean. Children died, all in his name. He slammed his fist into the stone wall, the skin of his knuckles splitting. Winston hovered behind him. "You told them to fight." "I told them to think," Mercer growled. The movement had grown too big to control. What began as a liberation effort now had splinters, factions, some preaching peace, others thirsting for vengeance. The Reclaimers, the True Flame, the Ghost Banner, each interpreting Mercer's message in their own bloody dialect. Some had stopped listening to him altogether. Mercer had become a myth, and myths don't get to revise themselves. Then came the message, encrypted, human-scented, voice only. "This is Commander Juno Reyes, Terran Fleet, formerly. You don't know me, but I served with your brother." Mercer froze. "My brother died on Vega Prime." A pause on the line. "No, he didn't." 3 hours later, Mercer stood in the engine corridor of a rust-ridden hauler, staring at a face he hadn't seen in 15 years. Aaron Mercer, alive, scarred, clad in torn Imperium armor, holding a rifle at his side like it was fused to his bones. "You left," Mercer said. "You stayed," Aaron replied. Two sides of the same mistake. The silence was volcanic. Finally, Mercer asked, "Why now?" Aaron tossed a drive onto the table. "Because you're about to undo everything we ever bled for." The drive contained documents. Not forged, not doctored. Winston ran a dozen checks. Terran Black Site 7A, operative transcripts, classified diplomatic records, Treaty of Vega Prime Nova Protocol Alpha. Mercer read them all, and everything fractured. 20 years ago, during the fall of Vega Prime, the Imperium did launch biological tests. But it wasn't just on civilians, it was on Terran soldiers, including Aaron. They survived. Barely. But in exchange, the Terran High Command had struck a deal. Secrecy, in return for Terran autonomy. Not independence, just silence. Mercer's own resistance had been founded on a lie of omission. They weren't exposing an empire. They were undoing a bargain bought with their own blood. "You're saying we agreed to let them enslave the rest?" Mercer said. Aaron shook his head. "No, we agreed to wait. Build strength. Bide time. We've waited long enough. Maybe, but if you light the powder too soon, everyone burns." Mercer turned away, shaking. "I've started something I can't stop." Aaron stepped forward, eyes filled with hard, broken love. "Then maybe it's time you chose who you're really fighting for." Hours passed. Winston hovered silently. Finally, Mercer looked up. "Is it betrayal if I tell the truth? Or betrayal if I don't?" Winston flickered. "You told the galaxy to think for themselves. Maybe it's time you trusted them to handle the whole truth." He released the files. Not with flair, not with a speech, just a single upload, attached with 4 words, "This is all of it." The fallout was instant. The Reclaimers called him a coward, said he had bent the knee. The True Flame branded him a traitor. The Ghost Banner vanished altogether. But something stranger happened too. Some people, many, understood. They didn't rage. They just recalibrated. As if the truth didn't break them, it clarified them. On Zaphon Station, a child soldier threw away her rifle. On Earth, a senator pulled funding from a warlord. And on a lonely broadcast station near the Void Belt, a pirate-turned-preacher whispered, "Even our myths are mortal, but that's what makes them worth following." Weeks later, in a back-alley spaceport on Meridian Drift, Mercer was sitting with a cup of synth coffee when a woman sat across from him. It was Nova. No guards. No guns. Just her. She looked different. Unkempt. Unsure. "I'm off script now," she said softly. "I figured. You ruined me. You were never real." She smiled. "Sadly, that doesn't mean I didn't feel." They sat in silence. Then Nova said, "What do you believe now?" Mercer stared into his cup. "I used to believe the truth could fix everything. And now," he looked up, "now I believe it's a start." As she stood to leave, she turned and whispered, "There's something coming, something even the Imperium fears. They didn't build me to stop you. They built me to delay you." Mercer stood slowly. "What is it?" But Nova was already gone. Winston hovered in the silence. "You believe her?" Mercer didn't answer. But his hand slid instinctively toward his sidearm, just in case. The core was never on any map. Not really. There were whispers, of course. Old navigators spoke of sectors where compasses spun wild, where star charts became memory puzzles, and where even AI dreamed in static. Those who dared to enter rarely came back, and those who did came back. Different. Mercer stood at the edge of the void wall gate, where the stars grew fewer and the dark grew loud. Before him was a corridor of impossible space, folded and blind to sensors. They called it the Maelstrom Path, a tunnel not made by human hands. Winston hovered beside him. "We don't have to do this." Mercer didn't blink. "We always did." The ship was a patchwork of rebellion and memory, once an Imperium Scout-class cruiser, now modified with stolen jump drives and armor etched with the graffiti of 100 dead systems. Mercer had renamed it, The Last Argument. As the engines roared to life, Winston began calibrations. Mercer's hand hovered over the console, fingers brushing over the old Earth Marine insignia still half burned into the alloy. Beneath it, a note scratched with a vibro knife. "If you're reading this, you still have time to turn back." He didn't. The journey was madness. Gravity blinked in and out, time distorted. Once Mercer swore he saw versions of himself standing in the corridor, watching him silently, eyes like collapsed stars. Winston's systems stuttered in languages he'd never been programmed to know. Radiation rose and fell like breath. Then it ended. The ship dropped into stillness, and Mercer saw it. A planet that should not exist. No name, no orbit, no light. Just there. Wrapped in clouds that shimmered like mercury, pulsing with electromagnetic patterns that resembled brainwaves, as if the planet itself was thinking. Winston's voice was shaky. "This place is wrong." Mercer smiled grimly. "Then it's exactly where we need to be." The surface was dead, and not just dead, erased. No wildlife, no wind, no echo. Even his footsteps didn't sound right, like walking on memory foam soaked in secrets. Structures lay half-buried, monoliths taller than mountains, carved with fractal symbols that made Mercer's vision blur if he stared too long. They weren't buildings. They were warnings. At the center was a spire, not built but grown. Its surface moved like breathing obsidian can hack, and at its base, a door. Mercer stepped forward, and it opened. Inside, light came from nowhere. Gravity twisted, and in the middle of the chamber, a throne, empty. Above it, suspended in a cage of silver vines, floated a brain, human, preserved, glowing with bioluminescent pulses. Hooked into conduits, its tendrils stretched across the ceiling like a nervous system. Mercer felt cold. Winston scanned. "This isn't tech. What is it?" Winston hesitated. "It's root, bio-grown, ancient." Mercer stepped closer, and the brain pulsed once, a vibration in his chest. Then, "You brought the fire." The voice wasn't spoken. It was inside him. Mercer reached for his sidearm, but the voice coiled in his spine. "They knew one day you'd find this place." "Who are you?" "Not who. What? I am what they stole, the first rebellion, the source of their fear." Images flooded his mind. A race before humanity. Bipedal, curious, fragile, born in fire, molded in agony. They didn't conquer with fleets. They infected reality, wove themselves into evolution, shaped the laws of physics to sing their name. Then they vanished, but not before planting seeds. One seed on Earth. "You're saying," Mercer's voice cracked, "humanity was engineered? Worse. You were a weapon designed to evolve beyond control. And the Imperium? Caretakers, jailers, midwives of containment. Mercer staggered back. We weren't uplifted, we were quarantined. The voice pulsed, sad and slow. And now your species is waking up. Suddenly, Winston sparked. Lights flashed red. Multiple ships inbound, Imperium war signature. Mercer cursed. How did they? I called them. The voice inside him whispered. It was the only way to bring you here. You betrayed me. I freed you. The ceiling cracked. Figures dropped. Armor-clad, faceless, fast. Nova was among them. She didn't raise her weapon. Mercer, you need to listen. They're not here to arrest you. Behind her stepped a new figure. Tall, robed, masked, a voice like sand over steel. You've seen too much. The truth cannot walk freely. Mercer raised his weapon. Try me. The figure smiled. You already carry the virus. You are the activation key. The room exploded in chaos. Gunfire. Psychic waves, walls peeling like skin. Mercer ran. Nova ran with him. Behind them, the throne room collapsed. As they reached the extraction point, Mercer turned to Nova. You knew, she nodded. I was built to find it. Then why help me now? She looked at him, eyes flickering between synthetic and soul. Because I want to choose who I become. They boarded the last argument. The ship took off, tearing into unreality once more. Behind them, the core vanished. Again. In the silence, Mercer sat, bleeding, his voice quiet. If humanity is a weapon, what were we built to destroy? Winston didn't answer. But Nova did. Her voice trembled. Something that hasn't woken up yet. The stars were screaming. No one could hear them, but everyone could feel it. A hum in their bones, a sourness in their blood, a ticking in the base of the skull like a countdown written in DNA. Mercer stood at the helm of the last argument, bruised, patched with nanofiber bandages, and older than when this all began. He was looking at a sector that didn't exist yesterday. RZ Vault 0. The system was dark. Photons bent around it like it didn't want to be seen. No recorded orbit, no real coordinates. It had just appeared. Nova stood beside him, no longer just human or AI, something in between. Her eyes glowed softly, not with light, but with choice. Winston's voice crackled over the intercom, filled with tension. Whatever's down there, it's broadcasting on every known quantum band. It's not a signal, it's a call. To who? Mercer asked. To anything listening. They landed at what looked like a dead star, hollowed into a shell of metal and memory. The surface of the vault was carved with etchings older than language. The symbols pulsed when Nova approached. The door opened without a sound, and for a moment, Mercer felt like he was walking into someone else's memory. The inside was bigger than any ship, any city. It was a nursery. Not for children, for civilizations. Holograms played as they walked. Alien forms from 1,000 dead empires. All of them saying the same thing in their own way. You were never meant to survive. But you did. Now you must decide who wakes. At the center was a sphere. Floating, organic, breathing. It pulsed with rhythms identical to Earth's tectonic patterns. It was Earth, in miniature, made from it, maybe. A seed core. Inside, Mercer saw it, the shape of humanity's origin. Twisted, weaponized, focused. This was the failsafe. This was what the Imperium feared. Not because it was evil, because it was pure. A version of us unshaped by fear, unbent by control, not superior, just free. And around the sphere, rising from the shadows, came the last guards of the vault. Not Imperium, not alien. Reflections, clones of Mercer. Not physically, but moments in time. A boy holding a rifle too big for his arms, a young soldier screaming in a foxhole, an older man losing his squad to a wrong call, a man haunted by what he'd become. Each one stepped forward. Each one demanded an answer. Nova whispered, "They're not your enemy. They're your reckoning." Mercer didn't fight them. He walked through them. He forgave them. And slowly, they faded. At the core, a choice appeared. Literally. A control panel unfolded from the air. 2 glyphs. One was a seal, lock it all away forever. The other was an eye, open the vault, unleash what humanity was meant to become. No guide, no gods, just raw, terrifying freedom. Winston's voice was soft. If you open it, there's no undoing it. Nova touched his hand. And if you don't, this was all for nothing. Mercer didn't hesitate. He pressed the eye. The vault bloomed. Energy shot into the stars. Systems shut down across the galaxy. Old AIs screamed as new laws of physics began to overwrite them. The Imperium's control grids melted, and across the human colonies, something began to change. Children woke up knowing things they never learned. Machines stopped obeying. Then, they started asking. Reality no longer followed a script. Humanity had evolved, not upwards, not outwards, inward. The Imperium responded, of course, War fleets came, but their weapons didn't work the same way anymore. Their soldiers hesitated, because now the difference between oppressor and citizen had narrowed to a single question: why? Back aboard the last argument, Mercer watched it all unfold on the view screen. Nova leaned against the console. "You just broke the universe," Mercer smirked. "It was already broken, I just gave it the tools to heal," Winston chimed in. "What now?" Mercer looked at the stars, still screaming, but this time not in pain, in song. "Now," he said, "we build." In the end, it wasn't the weapons, it was the will, the mind, the choice to evolve. If this story gripped you, if Mercer's journey sparked something inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let us know what hit hardest or what world you want to explore next. Your support means the galaxy to us and helps us bring you even more unforgettable sci-fi stories. Thanks for watching. See you in the next adventure.